This is Resonance. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Resonance. My name is Jose Castillo, and this is my first episode. It's going to be one that's going to be close to my heart. I'm going to be discussing Peruvian political turmoil at this point after their presidential elections on June 6th. And I'm originally from Peru. I was born and raised there. I went to high school there. I still have family. I still have friends living there. So this is a somewhat touchy subject. But I'm going to do my best to try to break it down for you and try to look at it from a macro perspective and just figure out what the role for the international community should be. Let's dive in. So, on June 6th, Peru had its presidential elections, and the battle was mainly between the virtual winner at this point, Pedro Castillo, on the left, and on the right we had Keiko Fujimori. So, Keiko Fujimori, let's start with Keiko. Keiko Fujimori is the daughter of Alberto Fujimori, considered an autocratic dictator, human rights abuser in Peru by his opponents, and a leader that abolished the Maoist guerrillas in Peru in the 90s. That's from the point of view of his supporters, the Fujimoristas. So Keiko basically represents a mirror image of her father's administration, not only in attitude, but her campaign has been surrounded by people from his administration. We have her father's Minister of the Economy as an economic advisor for Keiko. He was arrested by the Interpol, later sentenced to prison for corruption. And she also has her father's Minister of Health, who was linked to forced sterilizations of Indian women. This is the third time she's run. And in 2011, she actually had Rudy Giuliani, now the disbarred former lawyer for Donald Trump. He was her security advisor back in 2011. She just represents the legacy of her father. Her father enacted a self-coup in the early 90s that pushed a new constitution which hyper-liberalized the economy. And a lot of people are very, very anti-Fujimoristas. And a lot of the vote was not pro the opposition, but against Fujimori. On the left, like I said, we have Castillo, the virtual winner. At this point, all the votes have been counted, but a final result hasn't been announced. I'll tell you why in a minute. But let's talk about Castillo for a second. So basically, he was someone somewhat unknown to Peruvian politics up to this point, but he was an educator. He was a teacher. He was a union leader, and he was a rondero. What's a rondero? Rondero are the autonomous peasant militias that fought against the Maoist uprisings in Peru during the presidency of Alberto Fujimori, also, who incarcerated the leader. This Maoist guerrilla group is called the Shining Path, by the way. Who terrorized Lima and the highlands, especially during the 90s and before. So he's new to politics, and almost half of the country has voted against him. Basically, a lot of the worries that people have is that he is running in as part of a political party that is openly Marxist-Leninist. People are scared of this ideology. Totally understandable. Leninism represents an authoritarian ideological movement of a command economy, of a culture that's against the West, which I find mm, crazy to think that um, to to think of the appeal that communism has had in Peru, uh, because you think of the Andes and the highlands and the pre-Incan culture and the Incan culture, the traditions of community and reciprocity, and then you think of communism, and you start thinking that Peru actually need someone from abroad to teach him these concepts, or they're just uh, by default a very communal society. So I don't know. That's neither here nor there. But anyways, so he's running on the Marxist-Leninist Party, and the leader of the party is actually also was jailed for corruption. He was just released. He's definitely made the links between his ideology and Maduro's, Venezuela's, Chavismo, the whole deal. Also, members of this party are in Congress, and some of them have been linked to Movadev, who is the political arm of the Shining Path, this Maoist guerrilla that I was telling you about. However, Castillo has himself said that he is not a Marxist when pushed about it. He said he's for the people, and even his platform has somewhat flip-flopped. He used to talk about agrarian reforms before. Now he's not. He's talked about nationalizing the mining economy. But yeah, so the leader of this party, Peru Libre, Free Peru, his name is Vladimir Cerrón. So let me share my screen for a second so we can discuss this further. His name is Vladimir Cerrón. It's the guy on the left. He's the owner of the party. He's a Marxist-Leninist. He clearly has authoritarian tendencies. And yeah, the Peruvian elite and the upper middle classes are scared that if Castillo is proclaimed the president of Peru, that he's gonna that Vladimir Cerrón is gonna be his puppet master. That's worrisome for sure. He represents like the dinosaur left of doing things, very much aligned with the Soviet Union. And this is not an exaggeration, like in Peruvian politics, in American politics, when they call other people communist or socialist, they're just Democrats or whatever, he's the real deal. He's represented, he's been very much open he's been open about his affinity with the Chavista model. On the right here, we have the other Vladi. So this is the battle of two Vladis, hence the title of my video, Vladi versus Vladi. This one is Vladimiro Montesinos. He was the secret intelligence right-hand guy of Alberto Fujimori's during the 90s. He basically ran his narco state, and he ran a corruption mafia. He was the corruption boss in Peruvian politics during the 90s. I clearly remember when these videos came out of him paying out officials and paying out celebrities, and he filmed the whole thing. I think print screen, you can see right here the stacks of cash and the discussions that he would have with politicians. So he paid out half of Peru. He represents corruption, and currently he is in jail. But as of June 25th, there's audios that just came out of him basically directing his people and Fujimoristas in general. He's still aligned with Fujimoristas, um, to try to like call for fraud, to delegitimize these elections, and prevent Castillo from becoming president. Now, these elections have been considered to have been clean. The international community has a one sec. The international community has come out, and they had auditors in Peru. They've called it a clean election. Even the OAS has come out and said that these were good elections. There's no fraud, and currently Keiko has been mobilizing her supporters to call for fraud, to call for recounts, to annul certain votes. There's been issues with names in the votes. A lot of people in the Andes in Peru have the same last name. So it's been a total mess. I want to break down a little bit of how the media, the local media and the international media is reporting down there. So let's go back to here. We have yesterday, Jacobin, the magazine from the left, just posted this: Peru's socialist president-elect, President Pedro Castillo, in his own words. So Pedro Castillo actually wrote for the Jacobin here, and basically he talks about his life as a peasant, as a teacher, and his his view of Peruvian poverty and inequality. Here you can, let's read this. Peru's such a wealthy country, but so much of the wealth, such as copper, gold, and silver, goes to foreigners. At the ports, you see an endless stream of trucks taking away the resources of the country, and just 200 meters away, you see a barefoot child, a child with tuberculosis, a child full of parasites. That is why we must renegotiate the contracts with big companies so that more of the profits remain in Peru and benefit the people. We must re-examine the free trade agreements we have signed with the other countries so that we can promote local businesses. He also wants to enact a new constitution against the 1993 Fujimori constitution, and so this article is very much him talking about his struggles with what he sees to be the struggles in Peru, and he ends up with his slogan: "No more people in a rich country. I give you my word as a teacher." That's a great slogan. I think he always says that, and it definitely resonates. But yeah, again, going back to these two, the worst case scenario is going to be if Castillo is indeed proclaimed the president. The worst case scenario in his government will be if this man Vladimir Cerrón becomes the intellectual author of his administration. But Castillo has been aligning himself more and more with the progressive left in Peru, led by Verónica Mendoza, who is like the Podemos version of Peru in one way. He's been aligning himself with Mendoza's economic minister, Pedro Franque, who is a technocrat. Nothing radical about him. He's not pushing for agrarian reforms or none of that. So there's a possibility that Castillo is going to end up aligning himself with that economic model, which is more center left than any other of that party's platform, Peru Libre. This is the party right here. They call him the Pencils Party. Now let's look at the international media. I think this was a funny one. We have the Atlantic, Anne Applebaum. She wrote a whole piece kind of comparing the the calls for fraud and the mobilization of people to chant fraud and misinformation campaigns, uh, both in Israel and the United States, but also in Peru. So this is Keiko right here. She's the daughter of Alberto. I think there's what does she say? Oh yeah, there's some quotes here. Oh yeah, so there's 3 quotes here, and basically she's trying to give us a quiz. Which world leader made the following statements? We are witnessing the greatest election fraud in the history of the country, in my opinion, in the history of any democracy. I'll tell you already. This was Bibi Netanyahu. Then we have, this may be the most important speech I've ever made. I want to provide an update on our ongoing efforts to expose tremendous voter fraud and irregularities. That was Trump. And then we have our friend here. The election will be flipped, dear friends. That was Keiko Fujimori. So I thought this is a funny representation of the whole issue. Then we have the New York Times opinion piece by Steven Levitsky and Alberto Vergara. These are basically the marches that are happening. I think is there more pics? That's the president. I mean, the virtual president at this point. But what's interesting about this piece is at the end. The international community should not remain silent in the face of Peru's slow-moving coup. The world's beleaguered democracies need our support. They're calling what's going on right now a slow-moving coup, and it's gotten much more interesting because the people in charge of the elections, the electorate group, the national electorate group in charge, they usually come to an agreement over who to proclaim the president before July 28th, which is when the president comes out and greets everyone and wears the Peruvian franja. I don't know how to call it in English. Let me see real quick. Franja. English. No, stripe. No. Well, it's like the flag that they wear here. He gets officially proclaimed. He officially becomes the president of the country on that day. One of the members there that is part of a group of 4 that creates a quorum for the agreement of who the winner is has just resigned, and this means a lot of things. It's creating uncertainty. The audios that came out from Vladimiro Montesinos, this guy right here, they are related to pushing to try to push for the elections to be annulled, making moves at the national electorate group level. But yeah, let's keep going. So then we have this is Peru's most famous newspaper, El Comercio. They have a piece by the head of the CONFIEP. The CONFIEP is the consortium of private enterprises in Peru, and it's a very diplomatic piece. I think they're calling for just harmony, But let me translate this really quick. So our compromise is with Peru and our people. That's why we will remain loyal to the principles of the CONFIEP, to promote and defend the principles of enterprise and private property, economic freedoms and individual freedoms, institutionality, and the el Estado de Derecho, the state of law, and democracy as the best way towards progress for the country and for our families. Very standard. I think up here they call for just waiting for the results. Oh yeah, so this is an interesting one. We are finding ourselves in the final phase of an electoral process that is polarized and very tight. we're putting into question a central model of development that will permit us to regain our growth and our social development. When the final result is announced, um, we can play an important role in governability. Only united and in dialogue, we will be able to work together. And that is also true because if any of these candidates win at this point, neither of them will have a majority of Congress. So coalitions are going to have to be made. We have the VOA here. This was before the recent tumult. Peruvian voters choose between two polarizing populists. Um, What do we have here? I think these are interesting. Peru is the second largest copper exporter in the world, and mining accounts for almost 10% of its GDP and 60% of its exports. So Castillo's initial proposal to nationalize the nation's mining industry set off alarm bells among business leaders. But regardless of who gets picked to succeed Sagasti on July 28, investors will remain skittish. All right. Then we have Gestión. This is a very serious serious newspaper. This is a report on one of the congressmen from Peru Libre. Basically, what he's saying is, where is it? We are socialists, and our path towards a new constitution is the first step. And if we take power, we will not leave it. That's worrisome. So he is basically part of the first Vladimir that we're talking about, the first Vladi. The old left, the authoritarian left, that's the way we wouldn't want to have Peru go. And neither would be going towards a corrupt, hyper-liberalized economy like Fujimori's. There's a massive inequality at this point, and there needs to be change, and there needs to be policies that are more forward-looking. Here we have the Wall Street Journal. Oh yeah, this is the one that showed some interesting pics. Peru faces political turmoil after divisive presidential vote is disputed. Left-wing candidate's narrow lead is challenged by rival Keiko Fujimori, who has won backing from some retired military commanders. Oh yeah, that's another interesting thing that happened. Military commanders wrote a letter basically asking for these elections to be canceled and to not accept Castillo's president. Here we have marches, which are kind of funny. People were calling these the tiki torches of Peru. It's like a different version. It's just like a little candle with like a bottle. But yeah, they're marching for Keiko, clearly. This is a famous pro Keiko. Oh no, these are probably peasants that are for Castillo. But this chant, "Mi voto se respeta," my vote is respected, is one that's chanted mainly by the Keiko supporters, because they're the ones that are claiming fraud. But yeah, in this case, these are supporters of candidate Pedro Castillo, demonstrated in the city of Puno, close to the Bolivian border. And Puno had a lot of, the state of Puno had a lot of cases where a lot of voters had the same last name. So Fujimori's claims were that these were duplicates, and there was fraud. Some analysts, however, say Mrs. Fujimori's fraud accusations aren't about presenting legitimate electoral demands, but rather are a move to delay the proclamation of Mr. Castillo as a president and undermine his government before he has taken office. Her party has had a direct responsibility in the ouster of two presidents. Last year, Peru actually went through 3 presidents in 1 week. That's a whole different mess. Although Mrs. Fujimori apologized for her role during the campaign, okay, we get the gist here. And yeah, so this video is called Two Vladis, Vladi versus Vladi. I think these are the masterminds I mean, they seemed like they have been. Hopefully, if Castillo wins, he will not be aligned to this guy. I really hope this guy isn't behind such dangerous moves. The new audios that just popped up seem like he is. Sometimes it's hard to just figure out what to think, but yeah, uh, he definitely represents a huge influence in the Fujimori campaign still. Um, but now I want to talk about like what I think about these two candidates. I was very I was bummed out when I heard the debates between Castillo and Fujimori, because none of them was talking about any progressive or future looking solutions. Climate change wasn't even mentioned, and I think one of Peru's biggest issues is its lack of energy sovereignty, and this situation, this lack of connectivity, this lack of access, um, gives Peru, in a weird way, an opportunity to have a blank slate to create a decoupled energy grid. Um, I think if Castillo becomes a president and he's centered against authoritarianism, I think we have we can show here. I think there's a quote from, oh yeah, among Castillo's, oh yeah, I'm not sure in this, let me see. Among Castillo's supporters are former Bolivia President Evo Morales and former Uruguay President Jose Mujica, who, in a conversation via Facebook, told Castillo on Thursday not to fall into authoritarianism. That's the main thing, I think, with Castillo. He doesn't seem to be an authoritarian figure. People behind him do, the people around him do, but he's been getting closer to people that are not, that are more progressive. So I hope that he would stay on that lane, and that he doesn't reject foreign direct investment per se. I think he should manage it in a smart way. I think Castillo has an opportunity to create partnerships with private enterprise entities like Tesla or Sunrun or enterprises and companies that are creating an actual transition to a renewable future. Peru needs to be able to reach net zero emissions by 2050. According to the United Nations, the International Panel on Climate Change is asking the whole world to reduce global emissions by 50%, global carbon emissions by 50% by 2030, and go net zero, meaning carbon neutral, by 2050. So both the developed world and the developing world need to jump on board. And I think renewable energy and renewable investment and a large investment in green jobs and green infrastructure has the potential of giving Peru back some of that energy sovereignty. Right now, Peru relies a lot in they rely a lot on copper exports and gas production, and all those are gonna go away. Oil, I think, just investing in energy storage with the help of like I said, entities like Tesla, who have worked in other countries. They've worked in Australia, they've helped in Angola, in the UK, Hawaii. It could provide a good opportunity to connect Peru, especially Peru's poorest regions that are not connected to the grid, and that could help kill two birds at once with for Petro. Like, he can better the inequality and access to energy and kickstart the transition to a renewable future for the country. Anyways, I hope also that he tackles the informal sector in Peru. What I mean by it, labor in Peru is plagued by informality, meaning people have no identification, people have no licenses, they're not in the systems. It's very disconnected in that way too. Um, I'm very pro trying to create a more uh, a more inclusive society that has access to credit, that has access to education and health and all these things. But for this, uh, the citizens of Peru need to have an identity. I think maybe technologies like blockchain can provide uh, interesting solutions to the identity crisis that Peru has. Uh, Actually, one of the presidential candidates, Hernando de Soto, before the second round, um, he had done some incredible work in the Amazon. He At one point he brought indigenous people from Alaska, and he brought them down to the Amazon to have a discussion with the between indigenous tribes, and they were explaining how they transitioned uh, their old legacy uh, property right. They had some form of division of land within their communities, and how they ended up translating them and transitioning them to legal property rights that are approved by the state. So this would prevent a lot of displacement, in that part of the country. Um, yeah. Anyways, I think there's several solutions. There's an issue of monetary sovereignty for the country too, food sovereignty, education access. Yeah, there's a lot, and I think yeah, the international community right now has been very clear, calling these elections clean. They've had auditors there from Germany, from Canada, um, and yeah, I just hope that this mess stops. Like the New York Times is calling, there's a possibility of a slow coup d'état. Um, Hopefully that's not the case. There's gonna need to happen some kind of reconciliation between people. Families are torn apart, much like the United States uh, after the elections of 2020. So yeah, I wish Peruvian people the best. And yeah, I will keep keep myself informed on what's going on here, and hopefully I'll give you a positive update in the future. Yeah, thank you, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.